For the first time this season, we welcome our friend, former NHLer Carter Hutton, back to the show. Carter, how was your summer?
It was good. It was good. How are you guys doing? It was filled with kids and activities, and I'm getting back into game shape here, just talking my life away.
No kids for me.
Yeah, none for me either. I don't do that stuff.
Acting like
just acting like a kid. Yeah. Purple hat, interesting fashion choice.
I like it.
Oh yeah, nothing special. Just a golf hat. You should know. You play golf with Travis Matthews here. What's your handicap? I see you golf every day. You and your wife to be.
29.
Ooh.
I'm down. I'm a respectable 8.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. I'd have to give you some strokes though, but maybe you'll get there one day. I'm a 3 right now, so
not bad. Not bad for a guy with kids. You don't have the luxury that I do of just golfing literally every day.
Well, the perk is my wife runs a country club here, so she's the general manager. So my excuse is I'm just going to see my wife at work and bring the kids down and work on my game.
That is smart. All right, let's talk a little bit of goaltending. We're going to be having you on a bunch throughout the season. Also, starting goalies, which is a project you do for us over at Daily Faceoff, is back for another season. Maybe just quickly tell us about that and what you got coming for the next hockey season with us at DFO.
Yeah, we'll be cooking again this year with starting goalies. We'll be doing 3 days a week usually, and then hopefully we can kind of grow into it. So for those who don't know, it's sponsored by Bet365, and I will be getting a pick out each night, trying to figure out some matchups where I like some key matchups between the goalies, and then a few bets where I think that we can hit. And last year, I think we buzzed around 70% for the season. So I got some big shoes to fill last year. I might have been just a lucky, not looking for a sophomore slump here this year.
No, you absolutely don't want that. 70% is very impressive. So tune in, starting goalies on the Daily Faceoff YouTube with Carter Hutton. Significant goalie news over the weekend with Jeremy Swayman. We joked, they did the thing. Swayman wanted 8.5, the Bruins wanted 8, and then they finally just say, well, let's just meet in the middle after screaming at each other in the media for the last 2 weeks. What did you make of the drama around the whole thing? And what do you make of the deal? Is Swayman a guy, never played 50 games in a season? Can he live up to this kind of a contract?
No, I honestly, I think it's a pretty good deal the way that he, competed last year. And I understand that he's been in a situation where he's been protected, but lots of guys are going to be, right? They still have Jonas Korpisalo who can still play decent minutes. And for Swayman, I respect him standing his ground, especially like he had something he committed to and he's trying to help the goalie market, moving forward. I feel like this deal doesn't help Igor Shesterkin by any means. I think it's a little bit lighter than Shesterkin would have liked to see. But for Swayman, I think this is a good example of him standing his ground and kind of having that leverage he deserved. I think on the other side of it, looking at the Linus Ullmark trade, you'd think this would be something they would have had kind of almost in writing, a backdoor handshake deal done before trading Linus Ullmark away. But it's kind of nice to get this out of the way. And I feel for Swayman in the sense of, he holds his ground. They go to the media. So there's a bit of that frayed relationship. But I feel like, once this season gets rolling, as long as it gets off to a decent start for Swayman, this will all be in the past.
What do you think Shesterkin's deal would be then?
I think right now, there was obviously that number 12 that was thrown around a lot with Shesterkin. And I think that's just high with the way the cap's been. Like, it's going up, but I feel like teams just don't value goalie in that sense, where a guy playing 60 games and he's still, comparatively numbers for Shesterkin, he's got a little bit better numbers than Swayman, save percentage wise in the career, 921, Swayman 919. His goals against is a little bit higher than Swayman's at 2.42 and Swayman's in 2.39. So numbers very comparable. And you look at a guy taking an 8-year deal, I think you look at something, maybe a shorter term deal, maybe he takes like 5 years, 10 million, 11. I just think that number of 12 is a bit of a long shot now, especially with Swayman taking this contract.
So to tie it back into the Oilers here on Oilers Nation every day, I just mentioned with Swayman, like when we talked about this last week, it was like, yeah, I can understand why the Bruins are maybe driving a hard bargain here because Swayman wants to be paid like a workhorse starter, but he hasn't played 50 games, has never played deeper than the second round, has always had the safety net of Ullmark. I now look at Stuart Skinner and I go, okay, he's got 2 more years on his current deal. And then he's a UFA, not an RFA. So a bit more power to the player there. And Skinner can sit there and go, I've, at this point, played back-to-back seasons of 50 games. I've taken a team to a Stanley Cup final. I know there were some struggles in the playoff run. And he's never had the safety net of a Vezina guy. He's had Jack Campbell as his backup. Is there a case maybe for Skinner to be in the Swayman range when he needs a deal? Or are you not there on Stu?
I'm not there on Student just yet, right? I still think he's got 2 years to really get into that category. And, I don't think we can sit here and view a guy, he was kind of trial by fire, right? He was a chance. Jack Campbell was supposed to come in and protect him, and you're supposed to be a little more spotted starts. And next thing you know, he had the keys to the castle and he had a lot thrown on him, especially in a market where they're expected to win now, right? So, and I think he's taken a lot. He hasn't been able to hide from it, right? There's been times where he's struggled and he hasn't been great. Where when I look at Shesterkin, and maybe other than that little reset he had last year before the All-Star break, which he wasn't playing horrible by any means, but not up to his standard. And Swayman having the protection of Allmark that whole time. Skinner hasn't had that, but I also feel like he hasn't really proven himself to be in that upper echelon of, those go-to guys, right? Where this year you start looking at his playoff run, when he did have that little game break against Vancouver and Pickard came in and played well. For Skinner, I think this is kind of the show me year, right? If he has a really good this year, I think now we're talking about what is he going to want, and he can kind of demand the market a bit more. Because for him, he played, 82 games last year, regular season and playoffs. That is considered a modern day workhorse, right? There's not many guys playing those kind of minutes and putting up, not that his numbers were electric by any means, but if you look at a chunk of that first half of that season when the Oilers were struggling, his numbers were horrendous, right? So that turnaround was, I think a big confidence boost for this Oilers team. And even during that playoff run, how he could bounce back. So I think it sits well with the Oilers fans moving forward with Stuart Skinner.
Yeah. Liam's going to give you some overrated, underrated in a bit.
Oh,
do you have another question?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, well then ask.
Because I like to keep piling on this Matlock and goalie tandem list.
Oh, that pissed me off.
Oh, you're telling me. It's been weeks since I'm about it. Did you see it, Carter?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, so if you had to guess before I tell you the numbers, where would you have Skinner and Pickard ranked amongst the league tandems off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I would probably have them in the top 10, but like 8th, 9th, somewhere like that. I think Pickard doesn't bring a ton to the table, but I also think he's you look at his numbers, like I feel like he should be older than he is. He's 32. He's played 139 games with a career 904. If he buzzes around his average, that's a great backup. So I would put them, near the top 10 because I think Stewart's upside is still pretty good.
Matt Larkin, want to put a name on this, ranked him 17th in the NHL as a tandem. I think that was crazy. So a couple of tandems above them: Aiden Hill, Samsonov, Demko, and Lankinen and Seelovs, and then also Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Devin Levi.
Yeah, I would consider those two very unproven in that sense, right? I think that's still a giant question mark, and I understand that maybe a bit because of Stewart, having those little gaps in the season, but I would rank them a lot higher. I think Stewart's upside is a lot higher than we look at some of those other teams for sure.
You mentioned the Canucks trio there, and it's a trio because no one knows what's going on with Demko and his knee. I'm not really quite sure how to ask you about the Demko thing, but when you hear what he's dealing with, I forget what the ligament is and how long it's now been bothering him, there's probably got to be some concern there for his long-term future. And I guess part two is it's a Canucks team that's trying to repeat as division champions. Can Seelovs and Lankinen get that job done?
I don't know. This is the guy that played a lot of good hockey last year, right? 51 games, 918 save percentage, and a nagging injury. So the biggest thing for me is this injury has been bothering him for a while here. And Thatcher Demko is a guy that is an absolute workhorse, right? We're talking about a guy that when he steps on the rink, he goes full tilt, whether it's practice, whether it's games, whatever it is. So to be able to try to reinvent yourself around an injury and where you're at, especially the way he plays, is going to be a big challenge. I think for Seelovs and Lankinen, I don't mind this duo. My biggest worry with Seelovs is the fact of last year he gets thrust in this position in the playoffs where you're buzzing on emotion. Like, and this is something I can tell you year after year. I've seen this happen in the NHL. A guy would come up and play a few games and be like, oh, he's the next big one, right? And then all of a sudden you get into the grind of an 82 game season in the NHL and you can't really play on emotion as much. You need to be able to bring it every day in practice and prep yourself. So he's going to have a lot of weight on his shoulders here, especially with him being out for at least a month minimum, Demko. And I mean, that's a month before we see him potentially trying to get back into action. So I think there's going to be a lot there. I think Lankinen is a guy that can't really carry the mail. Similar, he's a great backup, right? He played on limited rest with Saros as a backup, but I don't want to see him 6 months into the season trying to carry this Vancouver Canucks team, where Thatcher Demko is the guy that is a difference maker. So I think they have some big shoes to fill, and the main thing is getting Thatcher Demko healthy because he is a big question mark for this Vancouver Canucks team.
Well, I think a good example is someone like Devin Levi. I don't think he quite came in and lit it up like Seelovs did, and obviously a bigger stage coming into the playoffs. But Levi struggled last year as a guy who was now this full-time goalie in the NHL. And they
had to go down to Rochester.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot where young guys come in and it's just you're playing on emotion and it's really hard to be sustainable in that sense. Not that they're not good goalies, right? Not that they're going to get over the clip and become those guys, but you need to learn. That's where experience comes in, and you see it all the time with goalies. It's really hard to see a younger guy come in and be super successful right away.
All right. In our preparation to get ready for the new
Yes.
season, Liam's got some overrated, underrated, or perfectly rated names to throw your way. So Liam throws you the name. You tell us, public perception wise, do you think they're overrated, underrated? It's a very self-explanatory game we play. Liam, take it away.
Okay, the first one we got Joseph Wall.
Ooh.
Overrated, underrated, or perfectly rated?
I hate to be right in the middle on this one. I think he's rated pretty well. Like there's a lot of upside. I think his injury, but I maybe would say in public perspective, in my eyes, he's underrated. I guess I got to go underrated here because I think this guy has a really, really high ceiling, but he's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, and the Leafs obviously go out and sign Anthony Stolarz over the summer as well. I did my one and only fantasy hockey draft last night, and this was the one I struggled with because I agree. I think Woll has upside, but they didn't sign Stolarz for no reason, right?
Yep. I agree. This is a big question mark for this Leafs team. And again, this is one of those ones where I was on a show earlier this morning. I talked about it's almost a formality of the regular season for the Leafs. It's like, what can they do in the playoffs? And a big question mark is in between the pipes.
All right, second one. Jeremy Swayman.
We just talked about him. Good.
Yeah, we did.
I honestly think he's overrated a bit. I honestly think there's a lot of upside. He's played very well, but it's different when you're the guy. It's going to be a lot different being the guy and having the keys to the castle, especially in a Bruins market where if things don't start well, this is going to turn on him quickly. And I feel like he's an interesting character watching that Amazon series, but there's going to be a lot of weight on his shoulders coming in now.
I think he's just slightly overrated with all the news that's just been around him too. He's been the only player we've really spoke about last few months, right? So I think just that build up, obviously a great goalie. But next one, Darcy Kemper.
Ooh, he plays on the Kings. Everybody, I feel like everybody forgot about that.
I couldn't find a photo of him in a Kings jersey.
Honestly, this is a guy that I spent a ton of time playing with. I know him. I would say at this point in his career, he's pretty underrated. This is a guy that can just kind of eat up minutes, especially playing on a team that can be defensive. He's not going to wow you. He's not going to be a guy that's going to, steal you games all the time, but I feel like he's very consistent. And I think a little change of scenery, getting back to LA where he really kind of kickstarted his career could help him out again. And he's a Stanley Cup champion, right? He has that in his back pocket. So I would say right now in his career, at times maybe overrated, but I think right now he's definitely underrated on that LA Kings team.
I didn't really know. I would say maybe just perfectly rated in a way too, because I don't really have a view on him.
He also does. He holds some power in this Western Conference playoff picture because if he bounces back, the Kings are a playoff team. If he's the Darcy Kemper we saw for stretches last year, a Kings team might miss the playoffs this year.
Yes. And that's where I feel like just being out there and settling into life. He's, last year became a new father. There's a lot of things that go into it. I think sometimes we don't view as on the outside looking in what athletes deal with. And him going back to a familiar place where he had a lot of success in LA before he got traded. So, that might help. And again, this is a team that knows how to defend well. I know they're going to try to run a little bit of a different system so they don't lose again in the first round of the Oilers. So I think with Darcy Kemper, though, he gives them a little bit of stability and experience.
Now, the last one, Calvin Pickard.
This one's easy for me. He's underrated. This is a guy that has value. He brings more off the rink as well. A journeyman. I guess maybe it's a soft spot for me, right? Playing with Calvin growing up and, coming up through the ranks a bit. A guy I think when they first brought in, everybody wasn't too excited about this transaction, but he was great last year. And then he went in and he was serviceable. He played very well in the playoffs. And that's a tough situation to come in. I couldn't imagine for a younger goalie going into that. So for Calvin Pickard, I think this is definitely a guy that's underrated. He is who he is, right? He's not going to do anything. He's not going to all of a sudden become a superstar overnight by any means, but he's serviceable and he brings a lot of value to this Oilers team.
I think underrated and underappreciated.
Yeah, Oilers fans got to give him a bit more love. He did save the season last year.
100%.
So
I mean, the people count is like he doesn't play any good teams. Like, well, he's not supposed to. He's the backup goalie.
So backup goalies do.
100%.
Comes in.
And there's value. There's so much value in that, especially when it's spotted starts, right? He'd come in every 2 weeks or just get thrown into a mixer, and nobody wants to hear excuses of why you didn't play well, right? I was in a very similar situation when I played with Pekka Rinne. It was a matter of I could look at a schedule and know when I was going to get a start, right? You just that's the way it played out. And you had to find a way to mentally get ready to go without reps, with just practice. And that's what Calvin Pickard can do. And there's value. And then all of a sudden, if there's an injury or something happens, he's ready to go and he can carry the mail to keep the team going in the right direction.
Huts, really appreciate your time, man. I know you do 1,000 of these every week, but you're one of the hardest working guys in media. We look forward to chatting with you throughout the year.
Thanks. My hat, what do you think? The hat, overrated or underrated? You know what I mean? I'm just, trying out something new this year.
I think purple's a good
I
color.
think underrated. People don't wear
It
purple
pops.
enough.
It pops. Well.
Pops.
There we go. I needed to hear it. I was a little nervous stepping outside my box here a bit.
Okay, see ya, Huts.
Yeah.
Okay, see you, boys.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.